I think that sometimes things should look a certain way, and you're like, okay, I'm going to put it on the market with a broker and I'm going to start getting offers. Sometimes just the informal way is definitely a good avenue to go, because I ended up getting it sold that way. And a lot of the PE deals that I looked at had so many teeth in them. And the deals were just not in my best interest. And so sometimes things don't, yeah, look the way that you expect them to, but that doesn't mean that they're not good. It's my best advice there. So
Rosemary, where does this conversation find you today?
I'm in Buenos Aires, Argentina today,
Um,
in an amazing coffee shop in Puerto Madero, which is a great barrio of Argentina, which is kind of like Miami, actually. It's very hip and action filled and it's the new part of town. So it's very cool.
I
Hopefully you'll
love
come
it.
visit someday.
Yeah. I went to Buenos Aires probably 18 years ago and went to that neighborhood actually and I loved it. I loved Buenos Aires. I definitely want to come back. So it's on my
Great,
list
great.
to head
Well,
back
come
there.
back anytime.
Yeah, awesome, awesome. Well, I'm excited to talk about your recent exit, but before we get there, I want to talk about the build. You are a three-time founder. The
I
company
am.
you recently sold is Gorilla Stationers, but I want to talk about your other companies as well because you
Sure.
help entrepreneurs in many ways, not only products, but also staffing and more. So, talk just briefly about your career path and then the start of these various businesses, and then we'll get into the growth of Gorilla Stationers and how you came to exit the business.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I was 18, I moved to California and I needed to get a job. So I started working in the office products field when I was 18. And I worked as senior VP of a office products distribution company in Orange for 10 years. And I was approaching 30 and I thought, goodness, I'm getting older and need to figure this out. And I can do this better, faster, cheaper. So I started Gorilla Stationers. And we're a diversity office products distribution company. So we sold paper, toner cartridges, general office supplies to the state and local governments because we're a woman-owned business. We also sold to the federal government under something called GSA, which is like a set aside for companies to have a contract vehicle to sell to the federal government. And we had about 900,000 different items on federal schedule during my tenureship with that company and a few different iterations of that contract. And, one of the hardest parts about starting that company was always hiring people. At first I had a distribution office warehouse and we had like 10,000 square feet and it was a lot of office space and people moving through the office and just opening the office and managing the place and the people was always like the hardest part for me. So about 7 or 8 years ago we started leveraging some offshore talent, not necessarily in like operational capacities but really like, hey, like, can you do some bookkeeping for me, and can you do this specific task for me? And so I found that they were really grateful for the work and that we could definitely use contractors in different like non-essential roles that weren't really essential to the business. So we started doing that, and it worked really well. So about 5 years ago, I started Staff for Half, which is my outsourced talent agency, and we're basically based in LATAM at this point because people here speak Spanish and English. Also, um, they are on the same time zone as the US. Because one of the challenges I always had with Filipino talent working for my other company was that they were working the night shift, and so moms, they're up all night, and then they're up all day. And it was just challenging to watch that and their health cycles. So I have Staff for Half for that reason in LATAM. And I also have a real estate company, and we do a variety of different things. We do short-term, long-term, commercial flips, a few different things. So those are my three companies. But I did exit my first company about a month and a half ago. So I'm really excited about that.
Let's talk a bit about Staff for Half, and then I'm going to circle back to the exit and the process around that, because you and I have talked about this business. I've also been outsourcing some of the back office, as it's sometimes referred to the Philippines, and have an amazing team, and wouldn't trade my team for the world. But I can certainly understand why the draw to, Latin America, again, time zone, like you said, language, and just talk about the growth of that business a bit. What types of clients do you serve, and how does that work, as far as, typically how you work with clients?
We have a myriad of clients. We have, design firms that we work with doing some architectural stuff. We work with law firms with legal assistants and like paralegal type work. We have some clients that own day spas, SMB market. We have, quite a bit in like just solopreneurs, like coaches, things like that, where they need just an extra set of hands full time. Most of the positions that we're filling are ops EAs, so they're just general, hey, they're going to get everything done. We also do some bookkeeping roles, and social media and marketing is another role that we do. And I started my offshore journey working with Filipino talent, and they're amazing. I love them. They're so kind. The culture's amazing. But when I would hear, how difficult their life was, that they didn't get to, see the sun basically ever because they're working night shift, especially in California, that's a difficult shift. And they don't really get to live a great life. And for me, a core value of mine is that we want to make people's lives exponentially better by working for us. So we're paying twice the local wage to work for us, with US companies. We're getting top tier talent, so they've got college degrees, they're motivated, and there's actually a very young workforce in Latam. So they've got a lot of great ideas. They're very AI forward. So they're trying to solve problems in different ways. And I was very attracted to that mindset because they've had to overcome adversity here for the last 60 years with just their government. And so they think a little bit different. They're very gritty, I think is the word I like to use. And they're problem solvers. So I always like to say that they're always like, okay, you told me no, but how do I get to yes? And for me, that's a big thing with having an assistant. Like, they're going to solve my problems. I don't want them to just do the tasks and think through, like, you know, day in and day out doing the same thing. So, I leverage my assistants to do so many things for me. They run my podcast, they do, my real estate stuff, they're doing my emails. I mean, they're doing so many different things, and it changed my life. So that's why I started Staff for Half, because I wanted to be able to help people find top tier talent, not just talent. You can go to Upwork, you can go to anywhere and find a person that's talented, but we're looking at like 1,000 people per job opening and going through a myriad of testing and background checks and making sure that they're trained. And another thing we do is work through helping entrepreneurs onboard their assistant, because a lot of people come to us and they're not sure what to do with an assistant. They haven't had one before. They're like, how, I want them to solve my problems, but how do I do that? So it's a really exciting thing because it changes people's lives in so many ways. And I'm, always grateful for that experience to see people grow.
Yeah, I've heard that, honestly 1,000 times, Rosemary. My entrepreneurs come to me and they're like, I tried working with a VA offshore and it didn't work. And I'm like, it's probably you, frankly.
Right?
Because
Yeah.
just having good systems in place and processes. But something you said that I really want to underline, if I'm understanding correctly, because there is, I think, a really big difference in the culture. And it's something you had said in a previous conversation The Filipino culture, again, beautiful culture, lovely people. But I think the phrase you used was they are a yes culture. Or oftentimes challenging and saying, hey, well, what if we did it this way? It would be better or faster. Or like, it's just like, here's my task, I'm going to do it. Whereas a lot of folks want somebody on their team that is part of the team, right? That says like, "Hey, I found a new way to do this. What do you think of this?" Right? So am I right in
Absolutely.
okay.
Absolutely. So, I mean, I've had some amazing Filipinos work for me for like 9 years, and they're like part of the family. So, I mean, I love them.
Yeah.
But
Yes.
yes, there is nothing that I couldn't ask them that they wouldn't try to do for me. And
Yeah.
the problem sometimes is that it's not possible, or there's a better way to do it. And they just don't necessarily come forward with those solutions because that's not in their, in how they're doing things.
Yeah.
So I think that as far as I'll give you some examples. My assistant is actually a lawyer. What my main assistant, I have two peers, but and so she's thinking of things like, hey, did we look at this contract correctly? Can we use AI? Because I actually don't want to do this task anymore. Let me show you how to go into ChatGPT, set up operator, and get this task done for you all the time because you're asking me more than once for it.
Yeah.
And, how can I help solve problems in your life? What can we do to, make this technology forward? Because it's a very technology forward company, or we're a technology forward company, but their culture is. I think it's also interesting. I'm part of entrepreneurs organization.
Hmm.
Yeah, it,
You.
and I'm sure you're familiar with the
Yeah.
organization, but I'm actually part of the Buenos Aires chapter, and there are about 140-ish members, I think, and most of them are tech. So everything here is very tech forward. So even the VAs and the EAs are very tech. How do we solve this with technology? And I think that that's important for me as an entrepreneur because I'm thinking, how do I get 20 hours of my day instead of 8? I'm buying 8 from my assistant, right? Because you're buying your time back essentially at a lower rate. And how do I get their 8 to 20 a day? And how do I move my objectives forward each week exponentially? But that's really a big thing for me.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you would share just kind of price range, just because I think it's helpful for people to understand, because I think a lot of people think, oh, if I go to Latin America, it's going to be a lot more expensive than the Philippines. And I was kind of surprised at the price points.
Yeah, so we started 18.95 a month for an entry level EA. If you wanted a mid level, an attorney, for example, you might pay 22 to 2400 a month to get somebody that's more senior.
Yeah.
And my assistant is, beginning of her career. So she's been working probably for 6 to 8 years, so that's mid level. But she's got a post grad degree, and she's definitely very capable to not only answer emails, willing to do it, willing to send the texts, willing to do all the things, but also is working at such a high level. I can't really compare that to someone in that might be just like a customer service type EA.
Yes.
So it's very affordable. I think that, we compare our prices and benchmark with Filipino talent agencies all the time. And we're, at or below their cost, but the people here are working their time zone 10 to 7. They have a normal life because dinner here is at 9 p.m. I don't know if you've seen that before, but that's very, very
Yes, I have.
Latin.
Yes.
Yeah, so yeah, they're working normal hours for them, and they speak Spanish and English. And I was living in California for 20 years. Spanish is essential. Even when you have to deal with construction or different industries in California, it's so helpful to have someone that speaks Spanish too. So yeah, it's a great fit for many entrepreneurs that are living in the US.
Love it. Okay, let's get into Gorilla Stationers. So different type of business. You had it since 2012, obviously brick and mortar, tying you to California as you
Yeah.
travel the world. I know you travel all over. So
Yes.
talk about, owning this business for 13 years. At what point, let's start with, at what point did you think about exiting the business, the possibility of exiting the business?
So, I mean, the thought came up about 5 or 6 years ago, but there were a lot of details that were very unclear to me on like how to tie it in a bow. And it's my baby, right? So, I mean, I started it, I've had it 13 and a half years, and, I wanted to make sure it went to the right home. And it needed the right buyer, and that's something that was really important to me, is to make sure that someone had alignment with our core values and would keep the team in place, had a plan for growth, and really wanted to make something of it. I didn't want it just to go to a big box and just get kind of
Yeah,
sucked in.
gobbled up and spit out.
Yeah, absolutely. And we had some PE companies look at us to buy, and quite frankly, it didn't make sense because, they wanted me to stay in the business and, work there for the long term. And I was looking to, be a global citizen and, you know, exit it to a good home that could run it and grow it.
Did you have a formal valuation done of the company at that point?
So we had, informal valuation done. We were in a very specific sector, so it wouldn't be
Mhm.
a very traditional, hey, get somebody in here to do an eval.
Yeah.
We had some informal stuff done. And then our business broker basically put it on the market for sale, and we received some offers at that time. And I ended up taking the company off the market.
Okay.
And then about 6 months to a year ago, we started talking to some other people about selling it as some brokers. And we were in talks with a few competitors as well to sell. And somebody else came forward that wasn't in the industry and said, like, this makes sense for my other business. It's an adjacent category. So
Hmm.
it made sense for them to say, okay, one and one can equal five for us. And so that's the company.
Amazing. Okay. And did that come through your broker ultimately?
No,
Okay.
it ended up not coming through the broker, and you know, my, I handled it internally, so
Mm,
yeah, it was not through
great.
traditional ways, kind
Yeah,
of
that's
an
great.
informal situation. Yeah.
That's awesome. How did that individual company find you?
So, they knew of the company for a while, and they knew that we were talking to some competitors. I had put forward, hey, like these are what the offers are, just because, informally they knew me through my business network. And they said, hey, this is what we could offer you on this. And we just accepted it and moved forward with the deal. It was a
Oh,
very
wow.
informal, easy
Wow.
process. Yeah, very
Not
informal,
a
easy.
not a
So
long back and forth. I have so many of
not a
these
long back and forth.
conversations where it's like, for 6 months we were negotiating.
No, no, it was very quick and painless. And they're growing sales already, and they kept the team in place, which I'm grateful for because some of them had worked for us for a long time, and so that was definitely important to me that they take care of the team. And yeah, so they're moving forward with the foot on the gas.
That's amazing. And then the transition period, I mean, this is just as of like October. We're having this conversation in December 2025. This just happened in the last couple months, right?
Yeah, so it's a new thing. I'd say that the transition's like 75 to 80% already.
Hmm.
They have a pretty robust team in place, and they're all very qualified. So they took over and were able to figure out all the details that needed to get done. And yeah, the transition's pretty much done. There's some lingering things that they still have questions about, and they probably will for the next year, but
Sure.
um, definitely moving forward.
Were you in communication with some of your team members about the potential sale throughout the process or, up to the end? How did you handle that? Because that's always a tricky piece of the puzzle.
Yeah, great question. None of the team knew about it. I think that was the easiest way to go about it, eh, for the good or for the bad. I think that to make them get stressed out about it, about the uncertainty, wasn't going to be in their best interest. So we kept it completely confidential. The process went pretty quickly, and yeah, they didn't know. And I think they were surprised as anybody, when I made the announcement. But once they met with the new owners and the new team, and it was very clear that they were going to make sure that they had stable employment for the long term, that their plans were to grow the company. I think that they felt more secure in the transition period because, like, they knew that they were going to be moving forward. So I think that the overall sentiment is excitement rather than concern.
Advice for others, having gone through the process, it sounds like you had a very pretty simple, painless process, whereas again, I talked to lots of folks where this can drag out for years. Was there anything as you reflect, anything you perhaps wish you would have done differently or thought about differently?
Some advice that I give to somebody that's trying to sell is don't always think about the traditional ways to sell, because ultimately, I did list with brokers and we got some crazy offers, crazy things happening with that. And when I tried to go back to market this time, I it wasn't very straightforward. So I ended up reaching out to competitors myself to try to get the business sold. And so I think that sometimes things should look a certain way, and you're like, okay, I'm going to put it on the market with a broker and I'm going to start getting offers. Sometimes just the informal way is definitely a good avenue to go, because I ended up getting it sold that way. So, and a lot of the PE deals that I looked at had so many teeth in them, and the deals were just not in my best interest. And so sometimes things don't, yeah, look the way that you expect them to, but that doesn't mean that they're not good. It's my best advice there.
A lot of people have love-hate relationships with brokers, I'm going to be honest. A lot of
Yeah,
folks
I
I've
mean,
spoken with.
I definitely know people that have used brokers in the past, and they're just trying to get a quick buck in. It's like a real estate agent. They're listing it,
Yeah.
they're putting the lipstick on it, they're putting the package together. But when it comes to it, it's the responsibility of the owner to do all the due diligence to get it sold, to, figure out, is your closet clean? What's happening with that?
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I think that there are many ways to go about things. This wasn't a traditional way, but it definitely worked, and I'm grateful that the new buyer's doing well and moving things forward very fast. So that's great.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, congratulations. A huge
Thank you so much.
accomplishment. It must feel amazing. So that's my last question. How did it feel the next day after you like signed the sort of official final paperwork?
Yeah, so like not really real because it was an easy process for me. So I feel like it took like at least a month to kind of settle in and like say, oh yeah, well, this isn't mine anymore. Because I still like had access to my emails and like I was getting messages, and like I think that it started setting in when I started settling in, when I started telling the team, hey, by the way, we have a new owner, and they're very surprised because it went very fast. Um, but I think that it felt great. I'm excited about it, but at the same time, I think that even after like 60 days, I don't know that it entirely resonates with me. Um, Fast forward.
Well,
Yeah,
Rosemary, thank you so much for sharing a bit of your
of
journey with
course.
us. I really,
Yeah.
really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. It's just a great chat, and I appreciate it so much as well.